Okay, we're into an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today, I have a really cool prototype preview from the brand Jack Mason. A little about them. They're an American microbrand proudly based out of Dallas, Texas. And I would say they're probably most known for their popular, well-designed, and overbuilt fashion watches. Yes, overbuilt. While many mainstream fashion brands can be kind of a letdown in the metal, Jack Mason has been a pleasant surprise for its customers, offering solid construction, sapphire crystals, and Swiss Subliminova BGW9 to a demographic that typically just buys mostly based off of design aesthetic alone. And they've recently just been more inspired to expand into the highly competitive premium mechanical microbrand space, shifting the lessons learned from dealing in higher volume aimed at a broader market into developing a more enthusiast-focused product line. And you guys know I've reviewed a couple of Jack Mason watches, some I actually own, and I really, really enjoy. And they're all, from this newer batch, and this is just the next release from within that. Except this one falls more into an everyday dress watch space. Now, in terms of some key characteristics and design, you're looking for something that you can, wear every day, but still dresses up pretty nicely. Of course, you're going to want that clean, classic, minimalist design, and of course, something that is sensibly sized. This is their Ellum prototype, and by the time this posts, actually, they're probably already releasing the pre-orders and everything, and depending on when you watch this, you might be able to just add one to cart. And I have to say, this one was really, really cool. Of course, I've seen their sports watches up close and have a lot of great things to say about those. A lot of times those are pretty much spec monsters, right? Here with a dress watch, it's more minimal, it's more stripped down. So really, so much of it does rely on that design. And I think, Peter from the Jack Mason team just delivers again. So essentially, the Ellum is Jack Mason's take on the quintessential mid-century everyday wearable dress watch with a signature textured linen dial. And then, of course, boasting the fact that these are assembled and regulated in the USA, which is awesome. And of course, that does come at a bit of a premium in terms of its price point, which is going to be $949, which is typically what you might see in terms of similar spec for something that was going to be from a smaller boutique brand, maybe out of Germany or Switzerland. But yeah, these are actually done here stateside, and I have to say I'm very, very impressed. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so they got a lot right here. So the tone of green, fantastic. But in terms of the actual dimensions, I'm really digging this. 38 millimeters in diameter, 9.3 millimeters thick, and then 44.5 millimeters lug to lug. Stainless steel, fully polished. You're getting a boxed sapphire crystal with an inner AR coating, and this thing is rocking. Check that out. I really, really dig this linen texture, especially since they went with more of a crosshatch pattern, which again, it just makes it a little bit more unique. And although this does have that kind of, again, that more mid-century vibe, I like that they kind of have really smartly blended in some more contemporary elements. Now, when it comes to the crown, it's a push-pull crown, nicely decorated there. And yeah, that's what you expect. You're not going to expect a screw-down crown. This only has 5 atmospheres or 50 meters of water resistance. So hey, you know what? If you are washing your hands, you get a little splash on there, you're out in the rain, you're going to be okay. Of course, I wouldn't recommend submerging this in water at any point. Unless it's absolutely necessary, you get pushed into a pool or something, you'll probably be all right to climb in and out. Now, in terms of the movement, guys, check that out. Highly decorated. And this is actually a mechanical Sleeta SW210, and this is the top decoration, which does include blued screws. Check that out. Beautiful Geneva striping and perlage there, just really finely done. And yeah, it's one of the things that help this watch stay very thin. But the nice thing is it's not overly thin. It's not just a one-trick pony where all it is this thin, flat dress watch. It actually doesn't feel flat. It feels very curvaceous, and it feels, again, very balanced, which is great, and definitely is a huge part in the fact that, yeah, you have a classically designed, classically trained designer behind these watches versus just, sometimes microbrands it's just, a watch enthusiast, and they have an eye for certain things, but, a lot of things can be very subjective. Here, you're getting something that has objectively been designed really, really thoughtfully, and in a way that I think just is very cohesive and comes together beautifully. Now, you can see that this thing is beaten away nicely. It has a 42-hour power reserved with a 4 hertz beat rate. So that's going to be 28,800 vibrations per hour. And it's adjusted to plus or minus 5 seconds per day. So this is going to be very, very accurate. One thing, though, that I will say is it's a bit of a trade-off. Yes, it is quite accurate. The fact that they adjusted it to plus or minus 5 seconds a day is awesome, but because there's not an outer 60-minute or 60-second scale or index anywhere, it's harder for you to keep track of that, right? I'm glad they have that sweeping seconds hand, which is beautiful, and that's one of the things that, when I think sometimes things get a little bit too minimal, we miss out on certain features. I love to see, especially with 4 hertz, right? You're getting a beautiful smooth sweep there. It would have been nice if there would have been some way, of course, for them to work one in. But I know from a design perspective, it's gorgeous. I think, maybe something could have been engraved so it's not colored or something like that. Just an outer 60-minute track would have been nice, at least for me. But for a lot of you guys, when you're putting on a dress watch, you're not worried about, high accuracy or whatever. So that it might not be an issue. But the more you look at this dial, there's so much to love, guys. Check out those indices. Oh my gosh. So you have, of course, that beautifully textured dial, right? You have the framed date window at 3 o'clock, but these applied indices are actually really beautifully faceted. Check that out. So they're going to be able to hold light, reflect light in a lot of different and dynamic ways, so that although this pattern, right, can be, because it does protrude quite nicely, and I think it's really nice. It's not flat. It doesn't look like it was just brushed, but it's not so 3D that it's going to really make the dial harder to read. And with that, of course, the thoughtfulness in terms of wanting something that is ultimately legible, of course, they added all these extra facets so you can get a lot of light play and a lot of different reflection, meaning, a lot of different contrast there for those beautiful indices against that great green backdrop. So definitely works out in terms from, a functional standpoint. And I think we all can agree that design wise, this is really good looking. So you have a 20mm lug width. And the nice thing is you're getting this beautiful Italian Epsom calfskin leather strap with quick release spring bars. The underside is really, really soft. And it's not too thick, not too thin. I like that. It feels quite sturdy. I wish it did have a little bit more of a taper to it. It does taper down by 2mm down to 18mm at this very nice, fully milled and even dual finished tang buckle there, guys. Even the fingers milled there, polished. Then you got some nice brushing, nice signed section. I personally would have probably liked a little bit more of a taper, maybe down to 16mm, something a little bit smaller. But I think broad appeal wise, more people are going to be probably happy out of the box with this type of setup, especially if you have a larger wrist. This is going to really help the watch wear a little bit more balanced. Now, if you have a smaller wrist, I think you're really going to enjoy swapping this out for something with just a little bit more of a dramatic taper to really key in on the vintage aesthetic. With that said, let's actually get it on wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this thing is absolutely gorgeous. Check that out. Look at the way that it lays, the way that it drapes. Really fantastic. Look how thin that is. And again, it's not a one-trick pony. It's not just thin. It's still beautifully contoured. They're still pulling out tricks just to make that case really hug the wrist, reflect the light really beautifully, and to where your eye is really focused on the fine details. There's things to capture your attention versus you having to look for it, which I really dig. Now, of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens, you're going to get some perspective distortion, and it's going to feel a lot larger than it is actually on wrist. So what I like to do is lay my wrist nice and flat, and then just tighten up the frame here so we can get a bit of still a detailed look, but just more of a truer aspect ratio. Check that out. And although my wrist is slightly on the larger side at 7.5 inches, you can see it's also quite round, right? So it's not flat and super accommodating for any old lug to lug. I definitely have to be quite selective and really take into consideration the overall dimensions. And I have to say, this thing wears exactly like you would want it to wear for a watch like this. On the dressier side, doesn't feel undersized, which is a battle, doesn't feel oversized. It just feels super just dialed in, which I can absolutely appreciate. Man, look at that. Capturing a lot of reflection, a lot of light. And again, this is just a really stripped down watch. It really just sticks to telling the time and looking good doing it. And man, yeah, it looks fantastic. Check that out. And look at those little details when we do catch it at angle, thanks to this crystal. Ooh, let me see if I can still get it to focus there. Look at that. You might even be able to tell that the minute and the second hand actually have curved tips, because this dial actually has some beautiful curvature to it, which all plays extremely well off of that box dome crystal. So again, you're going to get a lot of fine details here, but nothing overly ornate or decorative, at least on the dial side. You're going to get a lot of beautiful decorations on the movement end underneath the watch, but I think the dial, they really did a great job in giving you something that is fun to look at, but not too distracting. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist. Although there's no lume, we can still do some low light transition and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, so no lume, but check this out. One thing I always like to work in is a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, guys. And my goodness, look at how dynamic this dial is. Wow. Depending on the angle of light, check this out. The actual texture will highlight a completely different spectrum of that green. There are times when this, gets into a bit more of a teal, with tones of maybe even blue, and then bouncing off of golden tones. Oh my, wow. That is cool. I have to say, that is extremely dynamic and a whole lot of fun to play with here in the studio. But the nice thing some of you guys are going to notice, if you're not all about that beautiful light play, is that this is still remaining very legible, thanks to, again, the faceting on those indices. Check that out. So as much as the dial can reflect, refract, and absorb in a lot of different dynamic ways, you're also going to have a really nice contrast coming off of the different facets on those indices, which are really beautiful and still very stripped down and simple. But again, when you're looking, holy smokes, is there a whole lot that jump out at you in terms of the angles. And again, those just, the light play is really, really, really well dialed in. And man, look at this, just barely enough light here and still quite legible. You see the gold, that gilt over that beautiful sea foamy green colorway, and it looks darn good, guys. So closing thoughts on the wrist: perfect Goldilocks sizing and proportions. It lays flat and contours to the wrist really well without feeling overly thin, which does happen. Again, this isn't a one trick ultra thin pony, but really a well-rounded and balanced wear, which is something that in terms of, for me, especially if I'm trying to wear things, and I want to get it in the rotation, it has to be more than just a one-trick pony. And I love that here you're getting something that just feels really thought out as a whole, and of course realized and executed to just as high of a level as the concept. Now, in terms of model variants, definitely check the site links and in the description for options and availability. At the time of filming this right now, there's really only one other option, and it's fully gold case, gold dial, and of course the hands and indices are gold again. And that thing looks gorgeous too. I believe it has a black strap, same type of patterning in terms of the texture of the Ellum. And that one looked really good, but for me, the green was kind of the fun standout, really spring, colorway. So I went with that one. They blended in very kindly. I'm going to definitely be sad to see this one go. Now, in terms of comparable models, yes, traditional dress watches aren't really super abundant within the microbrand space, especially considering the choice of high grade movement here, paired with that USA assembly and regulation. This is kind of a rarity, and it's hard for me to think of something that's directly comparable. I'm sure there's going to be things that are comparable in terms of price, but guys, I don't need to hear about you could get a dive watch for this much money, or a GMT, or whatever other adventure ready watch. This is not that. This is specifically a dressy watch, and some people want to get that, especially I would say trending wise, things are going back down in sizing, and then of course just a more of a balanced smaller wear. The everyday watch did used to be a dress watch because people generally used to dress a little bit more formal, and I think this is going to go great with anything like that. I mean, long sleeve shirt, it doesn't have to be really dressy, but whether you're in business casual or even hey, it's a little cool outside and you put on a flannel, this is going to be something beautiful to peek out from underneath your cuff. So for me, guys, bottom line, the Ellum is a standout and is really far from the standard microbrand success formula, which is fantastic, right? So it's really great to continue seeing the Jack Mason brand do things their own way, driven by design and the desire to bring their customers something truly special with each new release. And yeah, again, they've done divers, they've done GMTs, and yeah, you probably could have gotten an adventurous field watch in there, but they went to do something a little bit different, and I definitely applaud them for that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.